What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. This is Dexion the Gamer, and this time we are going to be going over Pragmata. Make sure you stay till the end because I'm going to be going over Ray Reconstruction's preset D and preset E. Without further ado, let's get into the video, starting with our options. So this game does something a little bit different. It has quality, balance, performance, and minimum graphics presets, and even if you do choose quality, that still doesn't max out the graphics completely. So we're going to be adjusting that. So let's go to 4K resolution, and we are going to just be going one by one down the line to just max out everything. We're going to be starting with our ray tracing performance preset, and then we're going to be moving over to path tracing.
Welcome to the crater. Initiating environmental optimization sequence. Please stand by.
All right, let's do it. Just get in and get out.
Roger.
Come on, dude.
After you.
Alright, so starting off here, we are using DLAA with the ray tracing preset. Everything is looking good so far. You're going to get about an average of 100 or so frames per second on the RTX 5090.
Man, these people sure love printing.
At this level, the reflections do look very good, but you can kind of tell that they are a little bit low resolution. And as far as your CPU, you're going to be getting pretty much normal performance out of the CPU. RAM is 14 gigs consumed. VRAM is a lot lower, only just below 10 gigs VRAM being used. And the GPU temperatures are actually able to recess a little bit here because we're not using path tracing. So you're getting about 400 or so watts. And again, this GPU is slightly undervolted, so that is to be expected.
Fill us in.
I see someone didn't do their
Latency is
homework.
also looking really good at about 16 to 15 milliseconds. 1% lows are staying close to the average, which is about 110 or so.
It's called a limb
And so far, so good. Really liking the responsiveness here.
Back here again, safe and snug.
Alright, so it also goes without saying that when you are at native performance, DLAA with the ray tracing setting, you are going to get the best looking reflections, and you're going to get the lowest amount of noise in your scene here. As you'll see later on during the video, as we go down the upscaling ladder, things are going to get a lot noisier and a lot more fuzzier. You're going to see boiling artifacts. And I did try DLSS 4.5 as well in this title. You can access 4.5's presets if you use DLSS Swapper. And the NVIDIA app should actually have that up to date now. I believe yesterday it was not up to date, but now you can. And I tried preset M and I tried preset L, and nothing really improved the noise at the lower levels of the upscaling ladder, as you'll see in a moment. So this is basically the start of my runs here, and as you can see, our frame rates are still holding on at about 100 frames per second average, topping off a little bit there. As you can see on the screen here, you have pretty stable reflections, pretty stable lighting. It's nothing too hideous or anything else like that. And with the 5090, even the 5080, this is a good starting point here if you wanted to just use frame generation on top of this. You're getting at about 20 milliseconds of input lag right now. 1% lows at about 79 to 80. VRAM usage did go up a little bit as we loaded this level. It's at about 10 gigs right now. Power consumption roughly the same at about 400 watts. And system RAM consumed at about 14 gigs. And as we walk around here, you can kind of see that the reflections are a bit muted. As I said earlier, they are a bit of a lower resolution than if you were to enable path tracing. Not too much going on, especially on the floors and on the glass and everything else.
I gotta hurry and contact her.
But here we're going to get to one of my favorite areas of the game where I like to just kind of compare and contrast and look for noise. This little reflective wall here. And as you can see on DLAA mode, it looks very stable. No real complaints on that one. But as you see, once we lower the render resolution, we do run into those artifacts.
Please remove them from the premises.
Starting path.
Not bad.
Watch out! There's more!
You're going down. Take that.
Jump, Q! Shoot now! Shoot it first, please, Q!
Alright, starting here, we are using DLSS quality, and honestly, just judging from the initial images on, as far as shadows and reflections and everything is pretty much looking exactly as it was before. You might be able to detect a little bit of noise if you squint hard enough, but honestly, it's going to be really impossible to tell the difference. We did really get a very big FPS bump. Previously it was at 100 or so FPS. Now it's at about getting near to 200 frames per second. So a huge bump from just enabling DLSS quality. Alright, so we did make it to this room again here where I can take a look at the reflections a little bit better. And this is my staring wall. And as you can see on DLSS quality with ray tracing maxed, everything still looks pretty stable. No complaints here. And this is using DLSS quality once again. And so I definitely would recommend this if you just want to get a really fast frame rate experience. Your power consumption goes down even a little bit more. System RAM does creep up a little bit, which is interesting. Now we're at 15 gigs and VRAM is at 11 gigs used. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're on the lower cards, like the 16 gig cards or even the 5070. But besides that, this is DLSS quality at 4K, and you're gonna get a really high frame rate experience. Latency also still in the teens here, 14-15 milliseconds of input lag. Performance does take a little bit of a hit as you start getting into dogfights, like as you can see right here where there are a couple of enemies on screen and particle effects are flying around, but nothing too drastic. That's probably about a 20% drop, and we're still maintaining excellent smoothness and no weird artifacts going on with this image here. Alright, and with DLSS performance, this is when you're really going to start noticing the breakdown of image quality. If you guys take a look, you can start to see boiling and just noise on almost all the reflections that are kind of off the center of light, or off the center of the intensity of light. And as we make our way down into the corridor here, you'll see that even more. Yeah, so at this part, if you do want to run this, you're definitely going to want to avoid DLSS quality using super resolutions. It doesn't matter if it's 4.0 preset J, K, or 4.5 presets M or L. I tried them all, and you're just going to get a really sizzly, boily, noisy image. It's probably not going to show up too much on video, but as you progress further, especially once we go down to the room here, and I'm going to skip ahead to that part, it's going to be impossible not to see it. If you stare ahead at above the door here, you can see all kinds of noisy reflections, and the reflections on the wall are extremely noisy. You might even see a sparkle here and there. If you look at the wall that I like to stare at here, you probably can't see it too much on video, but it does look actually pretty stable, which was surprising. But then when we go ahead to our other room here, which I'm going to skip ahead to, you really do start to see it in areas like this. If you just take a look, you can see in the distance here, it's sizzling. It just looks awful. The lighting is just shaky and boily. So I would definitely advise against playing with DLSS performance if you're going to use ray tracing. But however, path tracing is a different story. So I am going to go ahead and start using ray reconstruction with path tracing enabled, and we'll get to that.
Are you gonna upgrade your gear?
So now starting off with preset D ray reconstruction with DLSS on DLAA on the path trace setting, you are going to get much more sharp reflections, and you're also going to see light just bouncing much more permanently, and your frame rates are going to drop for using this technology. We're getting about now 39 to 40 frames per second. And as you can still see, there is still a little bit of noise, but I guess that doesn't really count because that was a noisy screen there that we were looking at. Jumping up into the corridor, the lighting is definitely beautiful. You're getting much more sharper and more robust reflections, as you guys can see there. Yeah, this is going to be your typical 30 frames per second experience, even on the 5090 at 4K DLAA. You're maxing out your GPU's power consumption. VRAM actually is still at about 11.5 gigs. I thought it was going to go up a little bit further than that, but surprised it didn't. And your latency is quite high. And this is again with reflex turned on, so that's a 90 milliseconds of input lag. This is something I would definitely not recommend anyone try to play at for too long of a time. You know, settings like these are basically for just making content or taking screenshots. But you know, this is something that you would used to see with the old frame generation, but it's a lot better now. But anyways, back to this. So we're looking at my wall of shame here, and it looks really crisp because we are using DLAA, and you'll even see that persist lowering on the upscale ladder in just a few moments here. What is good to see is that getting into dogfights, it doesn't really tank the frame rate too much here. Then again, you are dealing with a lot of input lag, so you definitely want to be timing those parries real early if you're going to be playing like this.
Jump, you!
Get off!
And now for the money shot. So we have just selected DLSS quality with Ray Reconstruction's preset D, and I do believe that this is probably going to be the sweetest spot for graphics quality if you're going to be running path tracing at 4K maxed out settings on a 5090. Reflections still look just as sharp as they were running at DLAA. You're getting a much better frame rate, almost double at about 68, 69, 70 frames per second, and your input lag is drastically better than it was before. It looks like it's about half, giving you about 50 milliseconds of input lag. Your frame rates might dip down into the 50s as you start moving into more complex areas of the game, but besides that, Ray Reconstruction is doing a very good job at cleaning up the reflections here, and you know, the light still looks really sharp. As long as you're not moving around too much, you're really not going to be seeing any kind of artifacting or anything else like that. Now again, this is preset D. I am going to be comparing this to preset E, which I do have some good news to share with that. But let me just go ahead and skip ahead to the wall of shame here. Alright, so As you can see, the reflections in this game, they are definitely lower resolution when they're on surfaces like this. Not exactly glass, but as you can see, it is pretty stable. And if you just take a still right here, you don't see any boiling or, you know, sizzling artifacts or anything else like that.
We can use this to hit harder and beat things faster.
How you like this?
We did it!
And we don't need to spend too much time here talking about DLSS balanced. It basically looks just as good as DLSS quality, with, you know, no really observable difference in image quality. You do get about another 15% performance as you start getting higher and higher up on your monitor size, or, you know, big screen TV. You'll probably notice a difference on balanced, but I like to call balanced just quality light. And it does give you a good boost of frames.
You like that weapon, huh?
Now here on DLSS Performance is when you're going to see ray reconstruction finally start to struggle a little bit in keeping the image noise free. As far as general upscaling and anti-aliasing and making the image look sharper, it does a great job even on performance, but it does tend to struggle when it comes to denoising. And you guys will, you know, see that as time progresses in this clip here, and also when we get to the further clips. With that being said, though, you will get your highest boost in performance. You're going to get closer to what a 5090 would do on DLAA mode in the ray tracing section, or the ray tracing option here. Now take a look at this spotlight that I'm pointing the reticle at right now. I'm going to come back to that in a little bit here, but basically you can see a little bit of smearing going on when you're in motion, you know, especially with different light sources. But there is a solution for that. What I will say here, though, are the reflections still look razor sharp. As you can see right there in that vending machine, it's a glass panel, so it does look really glossy and really sharp, which is great even on performance mode. But as we make our way over to the wall of shame, you're going to start to see what I mean. And as you can see, you are starting to get a little bit of sizzling here on this panel here. And even just standing there, you can see it. Even, you know, coming across YouTube, you'll see it. Moving back and forth, you'll also see it a lot more as well. And looking down this corridor here as well, you can also start to see the sizzling going on, especially if I just keep him still. Right here, you can see right in front of me here that it's giving you the boiling artifact. But the light sources do look more stable than they did on ray tracing. And, you know, there's no sizzling or boiling going on metal surfaces. It's just overall, you get that boiling artifact going on. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the solution to our woes. Introducing Ray Reconstruction Preset E. Preset E is actually going to give you much sharper reflections. You see that spotlight? It's not smearing at all as you hover the reticle over it. And your performance is not going to change one iota. So especially if you're using performance mode, Ray Reconstruction Preset E seems to be a little bit sharper than Preset D is in general, even the upscaling part. But as we make our way down here, you can see reflections are actually getting closer to the quality preset on Preset D. Reflections are much sharper. You're not seeing that, boiling, sizzling effect going on. Super clean reflection right here off the vending machine. That's perfect. And of course, as we make our way here to the wall of shame, as you can see, even on YouTube, that boiling artifact is heavily reduced. It's still there very slightly, but it is not nearly as distracting as it was using preset D. Check out this side-by-side comparison coming up. Even with this room here, you can see that the boiling artifact is basically gone. And if you're looking at the floor, you can still see it a little bit, but it is nowhere near as distracting as it was before on preset D. So you definitely want to check out preset E, and you can only do this by going into DLSS Swapper or NVIDIA Profile Inspector and overriding the preset with Ray Reconstruction. You cannot access preset E through the NVIDIA app. And last but not least, let's talk about frame generation in the game. Frame generation in this game seems to do very well, despite adding a little bit of latency, and it's not nearly as much latency as it was in previous versions of DLSS. After 4.5, they really made it frame generation much more performant as far as input lag, and they haven't even really talked about it, which is interesting. But I am starting to notice it now in a lot of different titles. In my testing in Samsung, it actually reduced latency from not using FrameGen. So I think what they did is they added like a Reflex Plus mode that you can't select, but it only activates when you use frame generation. But in any case, frame generation is working very well. There's no crazy artifacts with the reticle or with the UI below. And so that was 2x. We're going to go off into frame generation 3x mode now. And once again, you really can't tell too much of a difference as far as, reticle ghosting or any kind of other extreme artifacts. And I even, did the spin test trying to get Diana's hair to glitch out, and you will start to see just a little bit of the disocclusion stuff going on if you spin the camera around and spin Q around really fast. And, but that's something that you have to look for. You're not gonna really see that in game. No crazy artifacts with particles or anything else like that. So this is a really smooth experience. And we're going to finish this video off with DLSS quality, Ray Reconstruction with frame generation 4x. And I honestly have to be really surprised, because it's still not giving us the crazy input lag as it did before. You're still only getting about 35 or 36 milliseconds of input delay, which is excellent for this type of game. You will need some kind of response in order to dodge and in order to make sure you get the timing right on some of the hacking stuff going on. So this is really good to see. And with that said, I hope you all got some value out of this video, and I will see you guys on the next one. Please like and subscribe. Peace.